Hello, dear viewers. I am a global nationalist. I support nationalism in my country, India, and in all countries around the world. Today, I will be talking about nationalism in a South Asian country. The country I will talk about today is Pakistan. Today, I want to talk about the challenges that are facing Pakistan, which are economic challenges, religious extremism, protests, and violence and terrorism. I want to focus on these because I think that these are not uh, small problems but major problems that Pakistan is facing. And I think that they do bring into question Pakistan's future as a nation state, whether it will survive or whether it will collapse. Based on these challenges, I want to uh, give my point of view as to whether this Pakistan state will overcome these challenges. First off, I want to talk about the economy. Pakistan's annual economic growth in calendar year 2018 was 5.8%, but fell to 0.99% in a year later and further to 0.53% in 2020. This shows that Pakistan's economy has been slowing for the last 4 years, and this is not just because of COVID, which hit in 2020, but is due to more deeper structural issues. I hope that yes, and also it is expected to grow about 5% in the fiscal year of 2021 to 2022, according to the governor of the State Bank of Pakistan. And uh, this is good that it's growing again. How and but this just means that it will almost make up for whatever growth has been lost since 2018 and has not yet started exceeding the amount it has reduced by. Therefore, whether Pakistan will actually start growing again more than what it was and increasing the size of its economy is in doubt. The reason I say it's in doubt is because of the following facts. The entire liquid foreign reserves stood at $22.773 billion, according to the State Bank of Pakistan, the country's central bank. Of this, $16.254 billion was held by the SPP. And and then in the week of November 19th, the reserves of SPP declined by $691 million. This primarily on account of external debt repayments. This is because Pakistan has taken in loans from countries and financial institutions such as the International Monetary Fund and countries like China. And it has been struggling to repay these debts. It's also borrowed from Saudi Arabia, which it's trying to repay. And because of all these repayments, its foreign reserves are reducing, which is very dangerous because it can make it more difficult for Pakistanis to import items into the country. And if they don't start growing their economies, start increasing number of exports, which would increase the amount of foreign reserves that they have, then if they don't do that, then they won't be able to have enough money to repay their debts, which means that the holders of those debts will be able to take whatever has been provided by the Pakistan government as security. I'm not sure what has been, but it will be very, I'm sure it'll be a very dangerous situation for Pakistan, especially with China, which, because China has invested in ports and infrastructure projects in Pakistan. And if Pakistan fails to repay the debt, then China will seize ownership of its projects and the territory around them, and Pakistan will lose that territory. This is the debt trap that China places financially weaker countries in. So, yes, Pakistan's debt situation is very serious. Its November inflation was 11.5%, which is the highest in 20 months. This is very bad news because uh, even in October, the inflation rate was 9%. And so it's been increasing month by month. And this will make it more difficult for Pakistani citizens to buy whatever they need to buy. Definitely, luxury spending will reduce. They won't be able to spend on festivals and stuff. They'll have to save up and spend only on the essentials. And this, because, however, even the essentials will be having their prices growing at a faster rate due to inflation. And so the savings of Pakistani citizens will reduce. How this, and especially due to the COVID crisis, which already sent many into poverty, this could also further send the lower middle class into the lower class directly, which is very dangerous for them. So that's the economy. Um, as far as religious extremism goes, Pakistan's government has supported the rise of religious extremist groups. This goes back to its founding in 1947 because Pakistan was founded on the idea that Muslims cannot live with non Muslims, such as Hindus. Therefore, it's a country that was born out of hatred and religious extremism. Therefore, there's no surprise that Pakistan has supported religious extremist groups. However, the Pakistani government has uh, swiveled between hardline Islamism and softline Islamism. And so, however, generally, it's the religious sector of Pakistan is much more extreme than the government. This is a conflict between society and government that is not just found in Pakistan, but also in many other countries, but is very strong in Pakistan and dangerous for the Pakistani state. Several political parties, such as the Jamaat-e-Islami, support Islamic fundamentalism. Schools teach hatred for non-Muslims. Uh, in the 1980s, when the Pakistani government allied with the US, supported jihadists in Afghanistan against the Soviets, is when the Pakistani government created Mujahideen and supported the Taliban in the Afghan civil war. And then the after the Soviets were defeated, terrorists were sent to Afghanistan from Pakistan, were sent to Kashmir in India, and so the Kashmir insurgency started. So an entire generation was influenced by militancy extremism. First, the Afghan jihad, then the Kashmir insurgency gained pace, and later 9/11. Last month, the tehreek-i-labbaik Pakistan, or also known as TLP, a Barelvi religious group, forced the government into allowing it to operate as a political party, which is not good. This shows that the government is giving in to the demands of religious extremists. And there have also been protests, which means that there is civil unrest in the country, which means that people are unhappy with the government. And so, for example, in Gwadar, the city of Gwadar in the province of Balochistan, the locals and even those not from the city gathered to oppose Chinese presence. There is resentment amongst locals against China's infrastructure projects. The locals have been saying that their jobs in these prospects are being offered to outside labor. Another issue that has angered people in Gwadar is that of Chinese fishing trawlers. The local fishermen allege that the trawler mafia is looting the marine resources. The fishermen had held protests in June this year against licenses being granted to Chinese fishing vessels in sea near Gwadar. All these demands, in my opinion, are legitimate, and I think that there's ample proof for these demands. And I'm glad to say that the Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has acceded to these demands and will says he will look into them. However, this shows that the Pakistani government so far has failed in uh, fulfilling the demands and needs of the people of not just Gwadar but also Balochistan, which could further uh, increase the Balochistan separatist movement. Then there were protests by the TLP. In April 2021, mass protests erupted after a series of calls for nationwide rallies and picketing against the government of Imran Khan and his cabinet. This the primary motive for this protest was in because of what happened in France, where a suspected blasphemous caricature was published. The demonstrators demanded a boycott of French goods and the expulsion of the French ambassador. The protests intensified across Pakistan after the party's leader Saad Hussein Rizvi was arrested on 12th April 2021. It ended on 28th April 2021 when the expulsion of the French envoy was agreed to be discussed in the parliament. However, in October 2021, uh, the protests restarted because the government failed to release Saad Rizvi and failed to deport the French ambassador. After the deadline for the release of its leader, Saad Hussein Rizvi, expired and he was not released, the TLP announced a march towards Islamabad. And there have also been protests against Pakistan outside Pakistan. This is because of the takeover of Afghanistan by the Taliban. And when the Afghan president Ashraf Ghani accused Pakistan of actively supporting the Taliban, hashtag sanctioned Pakistan was trending on Twitter and on other social media platforms. And there were protests against against the Pakistani embassies in the countries of Afghanistan, India, Iran, the United States. So yeah, this shows that almost everyone is upset with the Pakistani government. And there's also been widespread violence and terrorism. TLP's workers had killed several law enforcement officials in clashes. In recent years, the group has openly challenged Pakistan's foreign policy decisions and shown intent to take on the state without any hesitation. In fact, a ceasefire that was agreed to by the TLP and the Pakistani government this month has broken down, and the TLP has continued to attack Pakistan's officials. Also, the Tehreek-i-Taliban Pakistan, which is a Taliban that's located in Pakistan and has been negotiating a deal with the Pakistani government. And this is a Deobandi sect that has killed thousands of Pakistanis over the last decade. It was responsible for the infamous Peshawar attack in 2014 December, where Taliban Pakistan terrorists killed around 140 children in a school. And Pakistan government is now negotiating with them. This is very dangerous because the Afghan Taliban might see that the Pakistani government is weak and might work with the Taliban in Pakistan to overthrow that government, thereby bringing two countries under the rule of the Taliban, which could, uh, which will spread a lot of anarchy in Pakistan. There's also been a brutal mob killing of a Sri Lankan man accused of blasphemy in Pakistan. And protests have been sparked in both countries, and Pakistan's leader has condemned the vigilante violence. I'm glad he condemned it, but I do hope that he will take action against religious extremism, which is contributing to these acts of violence. And so, as I was saying, I want to talk about the possibilities of Pakistan's state collapsing. So, for that, we need to understand what causes a state collapse. So, these are the causes. One, excess immigration. This causes a state to collapse because the state cannot uh, provide enough resources for the incoming immigrants and its local population, and causes social upheaval and violence between the native and the immigrant populations. This is happening in Pakistan when, as we can see from August onwards, when 3 lakh Afghan refugees have illegally immigrated into Pakistan, which Pakistan simply does not have the capacity to provide for. So, uh, does Pakistan have this as a cause for state collapse? The answer is yes. And also religious ethnic conflict. I've spoken about the religious conflict, which is between the groups of Muslims. There's also not all Muslims, just extremist Muslim groups such as the Jamaat-e-Islami, the Taliban, and DLP, etc. Most Muslims, of course, are peaceful, normal, regular people. And there's also religious conflict between Muslim groups and Hindus and Sikhs. This will prevent Pakistan society from uniting properly and make it more divided and making it more difficult for the various communities to work together for the sake of Pakistan, and economic growth will suffer. This is also seen ethnic conflict where the Baloch people believe that they're being discriminated and uh, might start a conflict. So that is there. Armed conflict where Pakistan is in conflict with India. It sends terrorists to India across the line of control, and India, if India starts attacking Pakistan in defense, then that could cause Pakistan to lose territory, which could lead to the state itself collapsing as it loses control over the area it has. So, yeah, that's another cause that it has. International sanctions. There have been sanctions from the Financial Action Task Force, which is a task force, an international task force responsible for making sure that terrorist groups and other criminal organizations do not have access to finances. The FATF has sanctioned Pakistan under its grey list as a country that has failed to uh, shut down terrorist organizations in its country. However, it's only in the grey list if it uh, stops supporting terrorism and defeats terrorists, then it won't be grey listed and it can once again have access to the full expanse of international finance. But as for now, it is limited, and if it goes into the blacklist, it will be completely and utterly cut off from the global economy, which would, I think, cause Pakistan's economy to collapse within a few weeks, if not a few months. So, yeah, that is a yes. Economic crisis, I've already spoken about the if inflation and the poor growth in Pakistan. That can definitely cause state collapse. Excess government debt, I've spoken about that. Pakistan has that. Natural hazards, there is no evidence that Pakistan's environment is having more problems than usual, and it doesn't have many natural disasters. So this is one cause that's not there. disloyal military, because the military is so powerful in Pakistan that it is actually more powerful than the civilian government. Therefore, there's no chance that it will be disloyal towards Pakistan, because without Pakistan, it wouldn't exist. So, yeah, this is one thing they don't have. Government corruption, yeah, Pakistan's government is heavily corrupt. And in isolation, government corruption won't cause a state to collapse, but because it has all these other factors, it can be a contributing factor that would cause the state to collapse. Also, the final cause is a weak military, which Pakistan does not have. It has the second most powerful military in South Asia, next to India. So, as you can see, Pakistan has most of the conditions necessary for its state to collapse. However, there are several conditions that it does not have, so it might not collapse. So it's too difficult right now to say what will happen to Pakistan. I will follow the situation and report on it further. And I wish good luck to the people of Pakistan. Even though I'm an Indian, I want Pakistan to become a prosperous, safe country, because I think in order to do that, it needs to have peaceful relations with India. And so, uh, if it does have peaceful relations with India, I have no problem with it becoming a successful country. And yeah, if you like this video and want to see more content related to nationalism in South Asia, click here. If you want to see my previous video, click here. If you want to see where I got my information from, click the links in the description below. Thank you for watching. Vande Mataram.